The thought of losing again on Monday night should make them forget their problems and play their best game of the year.
Tonight is offense night. If Theismann doesn't get his offensive motor going, his defense will fail, and the Lomax scoring machine will win.
This ESPN program is being...
Steve Sable, and along with former two-time NFL Coach of the Year, Ali Sherman, welcome to Monday night matchup. Tonight it's the Washington Redskins against the St. Louis Cardinals. Began this season with high expectations, and thus far those dreams have been fulfilled. Their team is 3-1. For Washington Redskin fans, this year has been a nightmare, and they're hoping that tonight will be the night when Rod Serling steps in and tells them to relax, that what they've been watching over these past 4 weeks is the figment of somebody's sick imagination. Ali, the Redskins have won only one game.
Well, it's a cinch that neither team's defense tonight is going to dominate this ball game. They each have had soft spots on defense, but this has been covered up by consistent offensive scoring. However, for the Redskins, this has been a changed year. They still have the good players in the special skill positions, receivers like Monk, Muhammad, Barnwell, great. Runners like Riggins and Rogers, but their consistency has deteriorated. The Cardinals, on the other hand, they have an offense that has covered up those glaring defensive weaknesses by a very consistent scoring punch. What I'm saying is I truly believe that tonight's game, the matchup will be offense against offense, and particularly a performance of quarterback Theismann as compared to quarterback Lomax.
We'll be right back with a look at some skilled and not so skilled performances right after this. The Washington Redskins are a team that has lost its sense of self. They seem as dazed as a boxer on the verge of being knocked out, and the Cardinals have the punching power to finish them off. Under the leadership of quarterback Neil Lomax, the Cardinals have one of the most potent offenses in football. They rank second in the conference in scoring and seem to have all the weapons necessary to move the ball with speed and style. With players like O.J. Anderson, Pat Tilley, and all-pro wideout Roy Green, number 81, St. Louis has a multiple warhead offense, and it's armed and aimed at the division title. Tonight's opponent, the Washington Redskins, are traveling in a decidedly different direction. Last week, the Bears handed them their worst defeat since 1961, when Ali Sherman's New York Giants clobbered the Skins 53-0. You remember that one, Coach?
Loved it, Steve. How could I forget? With a score like that, I've got 53 good reasons to remember it.
Well, Washington ranks dead last in kickoff coverage, but most of the problems stem from the offense. They have only 5 touchdowns in 4 games, and they've scored just 46 points, the second lowest total in the NFL. Their usually crisp passing game has deteriorated into a series of poorly run patterns, dropped balls, and misread defenses. The games are getting ugly, too. A 30-point loss to Dallas, a 35-point loss to the Bears last Sunday. The Redskins have come completely unglued, hardly looking like a team defending anything, let alone a division championship. Says number 22, safety Curtis Jordan, right now, we're a desperate team. There's a joke going around Redskin Park. It seems someone called Joe Theismann's house. The phone rang and rang and rang. There was no answer. Joe was home, so the story goes. Problem was, Ali, he couldn't find a receiver.
Oh.
You know who tells that story best?
Who?
Joe Theismann. Shows you he hasn't lost his sense of humor.
I would say he does. I imagine so. He's a little guy, Steve, but he's a real big man. He's a heck of a person. Speaking of Theismann, let's go to the young Theismann. When he first came up, he was an outstanding athlete and could throw the ball, run around and throw it. Had no sense of the pass game, the pocket, what to do. However, in the last couple of years, he has shown he's the kind of quarterback you want when he's on your team. Number one, he knows who to throw the ball to. If he can't go to number 1, he goes to number 2. Number 2, he knows when to throw it. Very important. Number 3, he knows how to throw it. Put a little mustard on and get it in there, or take a little off and soften it up. Number 4, so very important, and he hasn't been doing this, and that is in the pocket. When do you get out? Those guys are at you and they're breathing heavy. Come out of there when you have to and then throw the ball instead of getting it to a shell. And the most important of all, the intercept rate. Don't force that thing. If there's a lot of colored jerseys of the other ball club around your receiver, take it, park it in the lap of a blonde in the mezzanine, and say, let's go again. And that's what you need in the quarterback, and that's what he had. However, this year, all of those traits seem to have disappeared.
Well, Neil Lomax has acquired some new traits. Now, he's a young quarterback. He's still learning his craft. He's still gaining confidence, and his teammates are still gaining confidence in him. And I think the biggest confidence builder for Lomax occurred in last year's Redskins-Cardinals game. His team was behind at halftime. He came out in the second half, completed 25 of 28 passes, and nearly led the Cardinals to a win.
And you can bet his teammates are really psyching him this week and saying, you're going to meet your kissing cousins. Go get him, right? Okay, when he was young, he showed he was an excellent passer. And his problem was the coaching staff philosophy, and his was go get the long pass, the big strike, right now, quick, regardless of defense.
Yeah, he had no patience in those early years.
That's right. You're right on track with that. He had no patience and understanding of... Now he has it, though. He has an understanding of the pass possession games, throw to the shorter receivers. And along with that, he also knows that he can't get impatient. But you know what, though, Steve? He's not all there yet. He really isn't, because he has shown, and there are games, when the going gets tight, when they fall behind, or he's getting hurried, then he reverts right back to that big pass.
Well, I'll be right back to analyze a key element of Neil Lomax's passing game after... It's been a perplexing year for the Redskins. Their offense is no longer magical. Their defense has been on a mystery tour and has disappeared. Washington's once respected defensive unit has given up more points than any team in the NFC except Atlanta. Tonight, that defense will be tested by the Cardinals' versatile passing attack. Last season, Roy Green, number 81, was the Cardinals' leading receiver in both games against Washington. He gained 360 yards and scored 4 touchdowns against the Redskins. 3 of those scores were on long bombs like this. Tonight, the Redskins will have more to worry about than just Green, because the Cardinals have expanded the dimensions of their passing game. Green still leads the Cardinals in receptions, but the next 3 St. Louis receivers are all running backs: Otis Anderson, Earl Farrell, and number 30, Stump Mitchell. Here, Mitchell is lined up as a wingback. Then he scoots into an open area in the center of the defensive secondary. Now watch this next play. This one's sneaky. Earl Farrell, number 31, is in a 2-back formation. Then at the snap, he moves up and sits in traffic for a second. Then he slips downfield and becomes a wide-open target for Neil Lomax. The most feared of the Cardinal runners is Big Otis Anderson. And here's a play with him used as a receiver that killed the Browns on opening day. After the snap, Anderson drifts into the center and falls in behind a protective wall of blockers. It's called a center screen, and with Anderson's running ability, a short pass like this ends up as a game breaker. In the NFC, the only running back to gain more yards receiving than Anderson is San Francisco's Roger Craig. Anderson is also used as a safety valve receiver. On this play against Washington, Lomax is pressured by Charles Mann. But Lomax avoids the sack by flipping the ball to Anderson, who has been standing nearby in case of such an emergency. Anderson's ability as a runner makes this play especially effective, because if he can avoid the first tackler, which he usually does, he'll gain good yardage. Last year, when the Cardinals played the Redskins, they passed twice as much as they ran. Tonight, Washington must match up against a passing offense that can and will attack in all directions. How do the Redskins defend it, Allie?
The Redskins must have a disciplined, committed defense to take the biggest dangerous threat away from them. Their dangerous threat on the Cardinal team, Roy Green, number 81, one of the great deep receivers in all of football. How do you do it? You must say we're going to use a zone defense. There's nobody that's going to cover Roy Green man for man. And here's the way we do it, and we're going to take it away. Mr. Green, we're going to drop our safeties to 25 yards as soon as the ball is snapped. Our cornerbacks are going to be at 15 yards. Our linebackers are going back to 12 in the middle here, as they normally do. You look to see if you've got a little room to run around in. Now, that shuts him right off.
Wally, we've just seen the Cardinals use those running backs to roll up yardage. Now, you're creating a defense that's going to allow them to use the running backs.
Okay.
You're conceding the short pass?
Well, would you rather get burned by the big gun or picked away of the shot? Steve, what happens is, remember, you can't build 100% defense. What you're trying to do is say, okay, take a lot longer time to complete your passes. And now you got greater margin for error. The receiver could be wide open and drop the ball. The passer could have a receiver wide open and miss him. And along with that, there's a patience of Lomax. He still hasn't got it all there. And all of those things add up to shutting Roy Green down and the Redskins prevailing on defense. Now, I'll tell you something. Let's take a look at that. A couple of weeks ago against the Giants used this philosophy, and they made it tough on Lomax. Here's the Cardinal big gun, Roy Green, number 81. And to follow the St. Louis pass theory of look for the long ball first, you will notice quarterback Neil Lomax eyeballing Green all the way up the field. The defensive traffic is too heavy back there, but Lomax, demonstrating a lack of patience, forces the ball to Green. Hey, Neil, there could well have been a disgruntled back or two open in the short pass zones. In addition to mixing the deep pass coverages, the Giants show another way to pressure the Cardinal pass offense. Linebacker Lawrence Taylor, number 56, adds blitz to the charge of the defensive line. Lomax again spends too much time looking for the long ball receiver, exposing himself to the pass rush pressure and causing him to force the pass. Two blue Giant jerseys around one white Cardinal jersey. 2 against 1 is always a tough matchup and often results in the hated interception. What you're looking at now is not simply the result of the defensive pressure applied on this play, but the buildup of many previous plays. The Giants' very deep pass coverages, causing Lomax to look longer and longer upfield, and then they came with the blitz. This caused Lomax to lose his sense of rhythm and timing, and he forced the ball on many of his passes. The Giants' varied defensive tactics built up a head of steam. And here you see the pot burst. The last play and this one occurred in the second half as part of that pressure buildup. Blitzman Taylor and defensive end Leonard Marshall add to Lomax's loss of timing and rhythm, and he still tries to throw that ball upfield. Wrong location, too many blue jerseys. Tonight, that Redskin defensive pot must be steaming and bubbling with these tactics to ruffle Lomax and friends.
While the Cardinals' offense is all-world, its defense has been lost in space. They've given up an average of 26 points a game and have allowed even more yards than the Redskins. Their pass rush has accounted for only 8 sacks, the second lowest total in the NFC. But their front four has always played well against Washington. Last season, the Cardinals sacked Joe Theismann 10 times in 2 games. Last year, the Cardinals' defensive linemen used a nifty little maneuver against Washington. It's called a drive and roll, and here it is. Eloy Scrooms, number 78, drives to the inside of guard Ken Huff, then rolls to the outside and into the Redskins' backfield. This is real slam dancing. Watch David Galloway, number 65, doing the drive and roll against All-Pro Russ Grimm. The drive and roll is just one small detail in the Cardinals' overall defensive scheme, which is devised to contain Theismann. The Cardinals' rushmen must fence him in the pocket, where he will face the full force of the St. Louis rush. They can't let Theismann move out of the pocket and buy time. When you look at the Redskins' offense, the questions pile up as fast as the losses. Allie, why all the turnovers? They lead the league in turnovers. What's happened to those two wide receivers they got from the Raiders, Muhammad and Barnwell? They haven't made a contribution. And what's happened to the great Redskin finishing kick? They used to be a good second-half team. This season, they have scored 7 second-half points. What's the answer to all these problems?
I think I can answer your multi-part question with 2 major reasons, Steve. One psychological and one tactical. The psychological. When you looked at a Redskin team in the last 4 years, a contending team, you noticed an intensity about any Redskin on the field. That man was saying, you could see it, I'm the man that's going to make the big play that's going to turn this game.
There's a certain energy with him.
Exactly. And along with that, every one of the Redskins knew we can do it, not we think we can do it. And that's a big difference. Now, the tactical part simply is this. The quarterback must take them back to the things they can do best. Use the Riggins and Rodgers controlled running game, use the Theismann controlled passing game, and along with that, he puts it together to pressure those defenses.
Well, that would seem to present a good matchup for the Redskins tonight because their running game is still very potent, and it will be matched up against the Cardinals' rushing defense, which is the weakest in the NFC.
It's a great piece of timing for them to go. They should do another thing. They seem to have abandoned a great play they had. It's in the Redskin playbook, it's called the dash play. And it's simply Theismann dropping straight back as if to pass, drawing those linemen to him, and then scooting out to the side on a dash so that he's got room to throw the ball or take off with it. And I think if we want to look back at a very refreshing part of the past, let's take a look at Joe doing his thing against the ball club. At the snap, watch the Redskins center pull out to become Theismann's pass blocker. Theismann's drop-back action draws the defensive line upfield, setting them up to be sealed off by the Redskin offensive line, while the center serves as Joe's policeman. This will not only help Theismann take advantage of his mobility, but will also tax the stamina of the opponent's defensive line. And this will be especially important tonight against a Cardinals front four that has shown a lack of lateral and reactive mobility. You just saw Theismann dash to the right. Now watch Joe, again with the center as his protector, dash to the left, taxing and testing both sides of the defensive line. The dash play could be a major force in helping the Redskins regain consistent, effective offensive pressure against the Cardinals and provide a difficult matchup for a very vulnerable St. Louis defense.
Let's take one final look at both teams. One is on a roll, the other is in a roll. But the Cardinals, with their spongy defense, are probably not quite as good as they look, and the Redskins can hardly be as inept as they seem. And, Allie, I like Joe Theismann. I think he's the perfect quarterback for Washington. He's a politician's kind of quarterback. He's persevered over the years. He's got guts and guile, and I think he's going to come out of that slump tonight and play a good game.
Well, I think he's got a good chance to do that, Steve. I don't know about the St. Louis politicians or how they feel about it. But let's take a look. While you're talking about Joe, I believe we've been talking about Joe on his dash play. Okay, and I believe that he should do it, and I think maybe we'll see him do it tonight. I believe he will. He has to get out there and throw. But along with that, Joe Theismann has thrown to his tight end more times this year than he has in previous years. And one of the soft spots, the biggest soft spot, in my opinion, against the Cardinal defense, pass defense, is in that middle. And we're going to see Joe go right up that middle to the tight end a bit.
Allie, another point that this game is on natural turf, and the Cardinals, with those receivers, are a fast-track team. In fact, they've lost 2 of the last 3 times they've played on grass, and Allie, they have won in Washington only once in the last 10 years.
Are you telling me you're beginning to shape up your pick for tonight?
I'm ready for you to make the first pick.
Oh, you got me, huh? Yeah. He outreached me for that check, folks. I've got to go first. Okay, here it is. In view of the fact that the Redskins, I believe, are holding a lot of hallelujah meetings this week. When you're in trouble, and it helps, by the way, and they say, hey, let's get going. And in view of that, and I think they're going to make necessary adjustments, I think it's too much to ask of them. And St. Louis has another dimension. There were close ball games last year, right?
Right.
Both clubs playing close ball.
2-point difference.
Right. And they split, did they? Okay.
Right.
This year, the St. Louis Cards have an added dimension, and that is they do throw to those backs more. That, with a little more maturity on Lomax's part, I'm going to pick St. Louis, and I'm going 30-17, the Cardinals.
All right, Allie, you know, we've talked about statistics a lot, but there's no statistic for poise, and that's what the Redskins must regain. And I think they'll do it by going back to that grunt and grind offense, Riggins and Rogers off tackle, and I think they're going to get a good night's work from both those backs, and I think the Redskins are going to win. So we have agreed to disagree again.
That's okay.
All right, for Coach Sherman, I'm Steve Sable. See you next week on Monday Night Matchup.
Monday Night Matchup was brought to you by Mazda Cars and Trucks. The more you look, the more you like Mazda value.